Um,
This looks
so
like a small group tonight. Did
yeah,
enough reminders go out in advance notice or?
they
Yes,
did. They did.
yes.
They did. This
Yeah.
is the summertime. I worried about this. Well, listen, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. This is the Wiehle Avenue Study Group, the Pedestrian Crossing Study Group, and we did send out an agenda before the meeting, um, and to try to suggest that we've had a slowing for the last couple months, trying to articulate all our collective thoughts. And I was hoping tonight that maybe we could bring that to a conclusion. Um, and we'll talk through that. We'll go around and have everybody give some thoughts. If just as a reminder, when we go back to the last meeting, we had a good dialogue, and then we said, okay, let's all make a concerted effort to try to get our final thoughts and graphics and anything else we felt we wanted to get in this packet. Send it to Jose and try to kind of pull that together. Um, so I know since the original um, draft summary plus a graphic or two went out, I know Tammy, you were kind enough to kind of share some additional thoughts in a package, and I believe that was sent out to everybody maybe just yesterday. Uh, uh, but that contains some good information as well. Uh, um, so I think again, yeah, we're starting to see our attendance dwindle here a little bit. The school here it is July 29th. And we promised Supervisor Alcorn we would have this. I think he asked us to have this wrapped up by August. So August is a couple days away. So that I
Can I chime in here?
yeah, I think
First
we
I'd
can
like
just
to,
jump in.
yeah, thank you so much. And I need to apologize to the team here. I have been having multiple eye surgeries. I just finished my third one, and so it's been very, very difficult to focus and read. And I can't tell you how many pairs of glasses I have, and I have probably another 3 eye surgeries to go through. So,
Wow.
that being said, I had a window of time where I could see well in this last week before they did the other surgery, and I started looking through everything and editing as well as I could, and agree that agree that we should try and wind this up. The last piece of this doesn't have to be um, a final another meeting. This could be our last meeting, even if we do have some work to do afterwards. And if it's okay, um, maybe set up the screen. I actually have it in front of me as well, the document, the draft that Rob sent out in the morning, that I've started to redline and maybe just go through it. And because I had a lot of changes as I walked through it, more, uh, Rob, you did a fantastic job of just throwing up a summary. Like, we got to get this done. We need to get the bulk of the information out there and blah, put it out in an amazing draft format and really good kind of a layout. And exactly what we asked for in terms of, you know, not really coming to a conclusion, but coming to a conclusion. Making sure there was fair representation on it. There are some missing items, the things that I would change are things that are judgmental. Um, and again, just to be very, very transparent and very clear about what we're providing to the Supervisor Alcorn and the board, um, should be just a very factual piece document. And so I went through the document with that lens, reading it a little bit for flow, but also with, if I were one of these board members, what information am I missing now? What information do I need to refer back to that I'm missing? And so changed the flow a little bit, but also identified items that I just wanted to clarify. And
Lori?
again, yeah,
Yeah, this is Bruce Wright. I came in a little late. I hate WebEx, but that's another story. Is this, which document are you referring to? Because I don't think I received anything today from Rob.
you probably received something a couple days ago from Rob,
Okay.
and it's marked 724, or are we looking at a 726?
I think the one that I sent out was 726.
So did you send it out to Jose?
It all came from
Yeah.
Jose. Yeah.
Okay, I only have a 724 draft.
Okay, gotcha.
Jose, I'm going to ask you to make that a lot bigger.
Yeah.
There's a 624.
Yeah, we're not looking at 624. Definitely, we're at, we want to start at 7. Oh gosh, now my eyes are going double again. Okay.
Would you like me to resend out the document to everybody? Just in
Well,
case you
I've
guys
got a
didn't get it.
document with a number of links that study groups, share file, LDS net case,
Yeah, so
etc.
that
Yeah,
email that I sent
the
out
bottom-
Wednesday.
Yeah, at the bottom of that, Bruce, there's 2 Word documents. So you have to scroll,
Okay.
you have to scroll the whole way down.
Yeah, I see them. All right, my bad.
Sorry about that, Bruce.
So which one? Is it the study group or the draft board?
The draft board memo with summaries dated 7/26/2021.
All right, great. I'll look at that. All right, thank you. Sorry, Laurie, for that.
I know,
Appreciate
it's okay. So, that's exactly what we're gonna do. Figure out which document we're working on, which one. If I'm looking at this one was 724 draft memo that I just received from Jose, is that different than it looks like it's different from the one just by December 2021 9, is there instead of early 2020? In the first paragraph called background, the date is different, so I know that the document is different. So
Yeah,
should
so
we
Lori, this is reflective of all the comments that I received just prior to the meeting, and Jose sent it out yesterday. So it's inclusive of comments that were as last Tuesday.
Okay, so I have both of these documents from yesterday. That's why I'm confused. Jose sent me something and then personally, and then there was something sent to the group. So I'm just confused. So we should be using
The
726.
document 726 that was sent to the group is the latest and greatest document that we have as a group.
Okay. So, are there a lot of changes between the 724 and 726?
No, there were just some, some minor just corrections and some editing.
Okay, because the reason I'm asking is because it's hard for me to read and think and be on the computer at the same time and make my eyes focus. So I either kind of have to do one or the other. So I spent time this morning going through and just working on this one document that's obviously the wrong document. But if it's not significantly changed, then we can move forward. If not, I'd rather just sort of, I guess we can walk through as much as we can, but I'd want to go through the final document with a fine-tooth comb before we let it out of our hands. Does that sound okay with everyone? That we go through it now and then we recirculate it another time?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
but one more look after the meeting, please.
Pardon?
Yeah, what I would suggest tonight is we hope to all kind of, talk about the final draft, maybe make some final recommendations on editing. And then maybe instead of meeting one more time, we could maybe, circulate kind of like a final edited draft. And then kind of come to, that'll be, and there might be some, some fine tuning that, that you all have to, trust us at the end here to get this package to the right location. But yeah, I think we want to try to hone in on, and again, let me just go back, and then Laura, I'll let you keep going here. But, at the last meeting, what we what we talked about was the trying not to yeah, put any bias in the opening kind of statement and summary. We just tried to give some background and then tried to basically take the comments that we have, and by helping the board just kind of almost just categorize some of the findings. And so the one change from the last meeting was simply, instead of using the majority of the study group did this or so many did that, we put percentages in as I think most of people agreed that would be more appropriate. And that was just a simple fact of just taking the comments and then just doing the math as to the percentages. And so so that was really the basis of the overview. And then the comments themselves were just, again, as people brought in their own comments and updated their comments, those are kind of shown verbatim.
No, I get that part. I hadn't even gotten to editing my comments yet. I was working on the document itself. So, okay, we can get started. Can I
ask a quick question, Rob? You said that the 60% was based on comments received, but at one point, didn't we also do, I feel like there was also a vote at one point where we did some sort of at least a straw poll. And so I don't know that just the comments received, did that capture everything?
That's a good question. Let's discuss it when we get down to that section. That's a really good question, and I also have that and want to attack it in a different fashion, but I think it's a great discussion. Can we start just at the top though and go through? Is that all right, Michelle?
That's okay with me.
Okay. And I don't know, do you have to go or right away?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Can you scroll up a little bit so that the background is, I'm assuming everybody's okay with memo to and from regarding. If you could just make it a little bit bigger, I'm sorry, Jose.
There's a typo in that first paragraph it's December 2019.
Yeah. Could you put track changes on while you do this? That way everybody will know exactly what's been changed and we won't have any questions.
What's the change there? I'm not clear.
There was a typo in the date, Maurice. Just I think it was an extra digit.
The study group was tasked to review.
But 2019 is correct, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they just had to take the 2 out.
There was an extra 2.
The applicant proposed an at-grade crossing and 3 additional alternatives if none of the bridge alternatives were chosen. Study group was tasked. Who proposed? The applicant proposed was tasked to review. Right. I just switched 2 things. I just switched sentence number 2. The study group was, before you say that, the applicant proposed an at-grade pedestrian crossing and 3 additional bridge alternatives is sentence number 3. So it flows better if you say the Wiehle Avenue Pedestrian Study Group was established in December 2019 in accordance with the pro-offer made by TF Cornerstone, the applicant of Campus Commons Development. The applicant proposed an at-grade pedestrian crossing and 3 additional bridge alternatives. The study group was tasked to review. So can we switch sentence 2 and sentence 3? Does anybody have a problem with that?
I mean, Laura, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I bet every one of us could have a various opinions on the verbiage here. does it really substantially change the message we're trying to bring across?
It's just the process. It flows through the right way.
Why,
What is the
Lori,
app-
why don't you discuss this later? This is we have so much more to talk about. Let's just get through it. If there's any substantive mistakes, let's catch them, like
Well,
the
there's
typo.
huge, and that's the first one. I have like my screen is red with all the changes I made.
I don't think we can do this. If
Yeah,
your
Lori,
screen is red, it's going to take forever. We're all going to argue about the various points. I think we need a draft that has the changes, and then we all look at them, because I just, this isn't
Is
going to
it
work.
is
This
it
is-
possible to put this on Word and do a comments, give everybody not editing, but commenting changes and
Well,
you know-
Lori, what about if you just, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if there were substantive changes that we could discuss and then, fine tune maybe later, but it's just too hard, I think, to try to finely tune the document with 20 some people.
How many people are on tonight?
20, 21.
Trust me, you can't edit by committee.
No,
Well, then let's talk about substantive things, and then Rob and I'll go back and change some, do a final edit and run it by everybody and see if we can get a buy off. But I haven't had a chance to look at this, and when I went through, I haven't had a chance to look at it when my eyes would both work together. So these glasses aren't working well either, but I'm concerned that the way it's phrased, some of the phrasing it is not as independent and transparent as I think we would all like it to be. Starting with, have we put in everybody's addresses?
not everybody's provided their addresses, Lori, so we had
About
asked everybody to add that as of last meeting, and some did and some did not.
So is it fair to say address unknown? If did we reach out to those people?
At the meeting we did, sure. We asked everybody to please provide if they felt comfortable in doing that.
Hey,
Rob and Lori, I
Rob,
think-
just in case, I don't think I was at the last meeting, but you could definitely include my address, Comstock
I don't-
address, as a representation from Comstock.
So all we need is, I think, a street address, city and state. We don't need people's street number. Do we have any idea, paragraph 2, where it says the background, in the results of this study group, we learned, in addition to the results, we learned that Fairfax County plans to hire. Is there any time frame that we can put on there as to when the expectation is that this is happening?
Yeah,
No.
that was all. We were
No.
told that was based on funding, so we really don't know.
and it's also based on 6 months after the metro gets started, and nobody knows when that is. It's backed up at least through March of 22. So we have no clue, Lori. That's an
Okay.
unknown.
Can you scroll up a little bit more so that we see paragraph 2 under the background? Thank you. In paragraph 2 under the background, Can we just add a sentence that says, the study group, or maybe it's in there and I can't see it. Unfortunately, the study group's recommendation is tied to a date certain, and will not be able to consider this information, or something to that effect.
It says it at the end of paragraph 3, Lori. It says, however, the study group had a completion date determined by the applicant's proffer.
Yeah, is it possible to move it up into paragraph 2 so that it knows that immediately we weren't privy to that information?
I mean, again, Lori, is that substantive or it's just a kind of a personal preference here? We're just trying to.
I think if people don't read information the way it occurred and the flow of the information, that their eyes aren't going to go to the next section. So to me, it is substantive, and every comment that I'm going to give tonight is substantive. I've spent an enormous amount of time working with this group. This is the end product. And if my name is going to be on it, I want it to be perfect. So to me, it is substantive. If you don't want to make the change, you don't need to. I would also add on that third paragraph, the study group held its first meeting, and I would put the date of it. We've held exactly how many meetings. Thank you for putting that in. I would also say who the study group was made up of. And my comment was this, because I believe that is very important to know, is made up of homeowners as well as the F dots, V dot, who was in this study group. Are we not typing or anything, or do you just want me to send all my comments?
I think you'll have to send your comments, Lori.
I think the paragraph 3 is an appropriate place to say we hired an outside consultant to review the proposed bridges and crosswalks and provide construction, practical, and financial analysis.
We didn't hire
And
them.
where that information can be found, and if we're not linking to it. And then
I think that's a very good detail to add. I think that, when we found out about the codes and the costs, that helped formulate people's opinions on what was feasible and what was not. So, but if you have more stuff like that, keep going. How long is this document?
well,
I think the current length is 5 pages.
yeah. So the stuff like that is the county spent money on a consultant. We don't want them to waste it, right? They've already looked at the crosswalk 6 ways to Sunday and the tunnel. And if they want to look more, they should have access to that information, just like we have. That's a oversight on our part, and if we don't provide that resource to them. I would also list out what we were hindered by. That would be my next paragraph right under this, before the results of the study group. We were hindered by the lack of available information on housing and development numbers. We were hindered by the lack of comprehensive traffic studies. We were hindered by the coordination between the different parties, RA, Fairfax County, TF Cornerstone, Comstock, VDOT, FDOT, all not necessarily all working in their different interests. And then we were also hindered in the lack of long-term planning for the benefit of all parties, the future of all parties. So those were the 4 major items that sort of are the reason why what is being submitted is a list of people's opinions, not a consensus.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. And
don't
I think
either.
that's your opinion, Lori. And I think we had a lot of good information. I think VDOT was here coordinating with us, FC dot was. And so I'd be opposed to including that.
Why do you think we're talking and we had this study group in the first place, Bruce?
We were tasked with coming up with what we thought was the best way to cross Wiehle Avenue. We had plenty of input from many sources. Maybe we didn't have as much as we wanted. Maybe the time frames weren't quite as good as we wanted, but we had what the county was able to provide us, I believe.
But
think
why were
Lord
we in
makes
this
up- Lord
position in the first place?
That's what I was
why were-
going to say. That's missing from this document and should be in paragraph 1.
Yeah,
You know,
What should be paragraph 1?
why we had to do this. This should not have had to occur.
This occurred because the various people asked Supervisor Alcorn to form this group.
Incorrect.
I
I'm sorry,
understand.
Mr. Wright, that's incorrect.
Yes.
Supervisor Alcorn unfortunately inherited this problem, but he by no means was connected with creating this. This happened because the applicant wanted to get their application through the process before he became a supervisor. And to do so, they failed to actually figure out how to get people across Wiehle. So this was their answer. This is because the community stood up and said, this is ridiculous. We cannot have people landing in a pork chop in the middle of the toll road. This is because we all said this is not right for our neighborhood.
Well, it sounds like you're proving my point by saying that the community demanded that there be a study.
You didn't say that though. I mean, I think that's also missing from here is that the community had to demand this. So that has to be in there.
I agree.
I'm fine with that. I don't agree with some of the other statements that Lori was making. I mean, partly because I don't have enough information to, this is the first time we're hearing this, and it would be nice to know, what the viewpoint is from the various sources that she's saying that we haven't provided us with enough information.
If I may make a suggestion, this is Tammy. Lori, why don't you send us your document and we'll go through some of the comments and discuss, some ideas and stuff, but we can't possibly wordsmith this, with 21 people or 20 people in a night. It's 7:30 and we have a lot more details to discuss. But I think if we discuss it in general quickly, we can you send it out and then people can comment on it. That's the only thing I can think we can do. We're going to have one more meeting.
Yeah, Tammy, a good suggestion. I'd also suggest, Lori, think about it I mean, you're raising some good points. You have some things you want to bring out, but those can also go in your comment section as well. We did try to provide more of a summary here at the beginning with not as much detail as you're recommending, but I think the point comes across to some degree because we mentioned in the paragraphs above under the background that many study group members would have preferred some of the information mentioned above would be available prior to our study forwarding our final recommendations to the board. We talk in the next paragraph down, the results of the group are preferences from the community and other interested parties. So we try to capture some of that, but a lot of what you're getting into starts to get into the what might need to go under the comments, your personal comment section.
I think the maybe the parts that Bruce has a opposition to that but need to go into my comment section. But I mean, I'm just being factual. How many meetings did we have? Why was this created in the first place? Those are facts, and they need to be front and center, good, bad, and ugly, we got together, we had this really amazing group of people gather together and try and figure this out. But we're hindered by people with opposing interests that, have a different idea of what they want, and we can't get together on it. Maybe Bruce doesn't approve of the word choice that I made, but that's part of the problem. Then the reason we're in this situation in the first place is because we didn't know there was even a building going on, and nobody was watching to see what was being built in our backyard and saying, is this really good for all of Fairfax County? Is this really the way to get people across Wiehle? Is this really the way to, continue the Reston Association? Is this really the way to continue those values of live, work, and play? Because we're going to stop people from living and working here by doing some of the things we're planning.
Well, I agreed with the first part of what you said, Laurie, about the meetings and how many meetings we had, who was in the meetings, and so on. But the other part, I think I agree with Rob that's your opinion. There was a whole planning process that I'm sure it wasn't perfect, but that's why we have a planning commission and a board of supervisors, and we have public hearings. And if people don't know about it, there's a number of reasons, but the county does have a public process for providing input, and that was held. Granted, a lot of people didn't care for it, but I think that's an opinion that I don't support in the body of the work unless I see it and have a chance to really absorb it.
Why the group was created absolutely must be included in this document. And if it's not, the simple fact that members of the group do not know why it was created is answer to why it needs to be in there. We can't expect the board to remember that.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that too.
I think also, if I may, I think another point that Lori brought up is incredibly important also. We do need to list who was in this group and their connection to the community. So are they a nearby homeowner? Are they with another group? What is their connection? I think that provides valuable and insightful information to the board as they're considering the suggestions in this document. I mean, you can't read a suggestion and not know who's suggesting it. That you need both points to actually be able to get the information needed.
100% agree.
I've never been on a group, and I've been on many groups in which we've had to list our street address as a participant in the group. I mean, I'm from Reston, I live nearby.
You have to list your address.
You're a bicycle advocate. We all know that. Just put Reston resident.
And I live within a mile of this place, and I go by here all the time. So
that's fine. Just put that down.
It's not, Bruce, every time you go to a Reston Association board meeting and speak up, the first thing you have to say is your street address.
Sure, and you say that it's public hearings.
Yeah,
I mean, on committees I'm on, that's not the case. It's your group. I mean, I don't care. I really don't care, but it just seems like it's odd that you are demanding that.
It seems like it's odd that you wouldn't be proud of who you're representing. Go ahead and say.
I'm representing myself, and I live nearby, and anyway, I'll stop.
Okay, so will I. I will send my recommended changes to the group, and I will do it from the regular document, and I will do it this weekend so we can move forward. But what items do you need to did you want to address other than finalizing this document?
I'm not sure what you mean by that, Lori.
Tammy, you had inferred that you had that there were other things that you wanted to discuss, and
yeah, let's go over people's suggestions and glean what we can to get as much into one document as we can. There's going to be differences of opinions, but if somebody has learned something since I don't know that you were at our last meeting, Lori. That may be why this is a little rough for you, is that we've had this discussion And I guess Rob was tasked with writing it. So, but this may be a very short meeting. We may need to meet again and look at your, wordsmithing and, agree or disagree and get it in. We do need to get it in. I'm sure Walter doesn't, he needs to get it to his staff or county staff in time to get it to whomever before the date runs out. And I think that's in October. Is that right, Jose?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
Tammy, that's
So
correct.
we want to proceed. There's no reason not to. We know what we know now. Let's just aggregate. If anybody has anything new. Rob, you have any other suggestion?
No, I think that's good, Tammy. Let me go back to the address issue. Is it okay with everybody if we actually just put either Reston, Virginia for those who live in Reston, or homeowner, as opposed to the actual number? The biggest problem is no one provided us their addresses. So we're going with information that's been provided to us to date. And so I understand we
Sure.
want to try to, highlight or have everybody be aware, the board be aware who was on the committee. But if I don't have the information and that's not provided, there's not much else we can do.
I can Google people.
I don't think we need to do that, but Jose could put out a request that just says, can you send your city and state?
And
we
say
send
if
out-
you're a close neighbor or, you
or the
have some
cluster.
affiliation. I'm on Reston Planning and Zoning. I've seen this plan before it came here. So I'm aware of why the study group was formed. Happy to say that.
Yeah.
And
I'm happy to give my address. I mean, I don't understand why that's a problem.
I just emailed Jose my address and that I'm with Reston Citizens Association, which is, I'm here under that hat.
Thank you.
So I in my redo, I have homeowner, comma, Reston, Virginia. For maybe Rob, he might want to have homeowner because he's also a homeowner. Are you the chairperson of the Reston Association Planning and Zoning?
It's
Right.
the Reston Planning and Zoning Committee, yes.
Okay, Reston Planning and Zoning, comma, Reston, Virginia.
And Lori, I would suggest you just say Reston resident, because if you rent or you own, it's irrelevant. If you're
thank you.
if you're close to this area, if you're in proximity and this project is going to impact your egress and exit onto South Sunrise, that needs to be known.
Okay.
You live here, you know what the traffic is. It's not a guess.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That pointing out a diversity item for me, and I didn't really even think about that.
All right. How about we hear for some others? Let's see. Maurice, I know you were on the line. Let's see if you have any words of wisdom. Oh,
Not at this time.
all right. Thank you. I'm just going by my list here. Scott, do you want to weigh in here in any way? Scott, I'm not hearing you. I don't think you're on mute. All right, not sure where Scott is. How about Michael McDermott? Mike, you're on mute. There you go.
I think he's muted still.
He
Let me try
dropped off
Mike. Give me 1 sec.
Yeah, he dropped off my screen.
Can
altogether.
you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay. I'm not sure what I was, anyway, I'm good with the write-up, quite frankly. We definitely cannot edit it as a 21 group person. I'm fine going over comments that get sent out. I missed the request for the address, so I'm glad to give my address as a homeowner as also chair of the Multimodal Transportation Advisory Committee. So I'll be glad to include that. That's it.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks. Let's go to Dave Bryant. Any other words of wisdom?
I got a little frustrated when I heard that Comstock wasn't cooperating. Comstock has been working very diligently on this committee. If we're not sharing plans, it's because we don't know what we're doing yet with our property. And so I think it was a very bad accusation that Comstock refuses to share information. And again, a reminder that what we're doing is we're analyzing the proffer itself, and whether or not we want an above grade crossing, at grade crossing, or below grade crossing. I don't think it's any more than that. Option 1, 2, or 3. So with that, I will be quiet now.
Thank you, Dave. Connie, have you any more comments?
No, thank you.
All right, I'm just trying to make sure I don't miss anybody here. My list is really, I guess I should get in a different mode here. Sorry, I don't have my big screen tonight.
Rob, there
Yeah.
I think you've hit almost everybody who's not a staffer. So
I have a something for discussion that's a substantial thing that we should agree on before we proceed.
Okay.
We also skipped over my question.
Oh,
speak up.
My question was, how did you get to 60%?
So the percentages are purely from the comments in the text below in the summary of the comments that were provided. So it's a direct correlation between that. So
And I don't think that.
Yeah,
Sorry,
we didn't
Rob,
go
I didn't
back
cut you
to
off.
we didn't go back to a straw poll. The straw poll was yeah a moment in time, and then people have then since provided additional comment and viewpoints, and that's what we used in the in the summary.
So to that end, then I think that if we're going to include a percentage, we should actually do some sort of a vote. And I just don't think that we can just use just the few who provided comments, because others have participated and have also expressed things. And I just don't think it's that 60-60. That's not what I remember from the straw poll. And I just think if we're going to use a percentage, that should actually reflect something more than just the few people who provided comments for the written document.
The percentage discussion was one of I made a comment on that of you're going to use percentages, and that was suggested by a member who's not here tonight. But if you're going to use that percentage, you have to say, hey, there were 20 people here, not give the impression that 2,000 people voted on this.
well, and this goes to the heart of my my substantive piece. We actually had 6 options, not just 4 that we were presented with. And we had also the underpass that we thought about, so to add that to our 4th. And then we had a mid-block crossing that we also looked at. And I was wondering if we could actually do a grid and put the numbers in there, so there's no confusion in terms of percentages. There's a very transparent, there were 5 yeses, there were 2 nos, there were, for the bridge options, there were 0 yeses, there were 10 nos, whatever it was. And we can only count the people who have decided to include the comments. So I'm thinking of it more in a grid.
So Lori, if I heard you right, you just said, but only include those that are making comments?
Well, you can't really, I mean, if you're not putting a comment in at the bottom, which everyone in this group should be doing, then you really can't be on the matrix, right? Everybody should be adding their comments at the
Yeah,
end.
but we all participated during the series of these meetings, and it seems like, you know, that there's a consensus that we've reached. And
I'm
many people commented during the meeting. They may not have included a comment in this document, but
Yeah, I didn't know I had to comment in this document. I sent, I didn't know that, sorry.
Oh, I think we want everybody's comments in the document. I think that was very clear from the beginning.
Jose, did what I write get put in this document? There's sort of, I wouldn't think, I didn't realize, I'm sorry.
I do
Maybe
not,
so.
See
I do
it.
not see Connie.
Connie, we
Connie's
can add
comments.
your comments in here. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's not on there.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it was not, you know, it wasn't that black and white. It's nobody's fault but my own. But if it needs to be counted for a vote, I'll figure out how to add comments in this document. Sorry.
If I may interject, Lori, I do think that, you know, if someone was participating in 10 or 11 meetings and we're holding this last meeting in July, I don't think it would be fair to completely discount that person's voice in this.
Well, then how can we get everybody's yes or no on different options? We'd have to do an actual poll. And it would be an actual grid where there were 6 options, yes or no.
Yeah, and I think the group discussed doing that probably 3 meetings ago and decided that was not how we wanted to present the information.
Well, then
Yeah.
if you're counting percentages just from the comments below, then
Yeah,
you're
no,
still inaccurately
I
counting.
agree with your point there.
But Lori, you were just suggesting a matrix with just the people in the comments below that would be doing just the same thing, though. But you only using information from those sources. So, listen, rather than getting wrapped up into the percentages, I mean, we'll do it either way. But what we found out was, let's go to the finish line. We found out was this entire group, 100% of the group, did not favor the bridge options, any of them. And so that was a huge revelation, I think, when we all came to that conclusion, and that's a pretty strong statement.
So if I may, Rob, on that statement, I think that also misses part of it, though. Some of us didn't favor it because they are simply not viable.
Well, and we
I
say,
don't-
no, we mentioned that, and in people's individual comments, it's very much highlighted.
I think that it needs to be said in there that the applicant has also not agreed to make the necessary changes.
That was refuted, Michelle. So that
It
is
was
not
not refuted. They have not agreed
That
to
is
make the
refuted,
necessary
Michelle.
changes.
no.
That's not
It
factual.
was refuted, but we have it on tape that when they when I asked if you would make it up to code and safe, they said no. And they
No,
came
you-
back
you
the
asked if I
next
would make
meeting
every
and said,
change that
yes, we have it on
DOT
tape.
Yeah,
So, but
so
they
did
did
I.
they did
Okay.
refute it in a
Tim, here's your opportunity now. If the 3 options you've proposed, they cannot be built as proposed. Will you pay
don't
to
know that
have
that's
them
true.
built?
We will pay to have them, we will build them as per code.
Then you are not refuting what I have said. You
I
are
am.
saying exactly
am.
what I said, which is that you will not agree to make the necessary changes to actually build them.
That is not what I said.
So I think what's going on is a difference. So there's a notional version of the buildings. There's a version of the building of the bridges. There's a version of the bridges that the consultant came back with and said this would be the ideal. And then there's an in-between. And the in-between
Mary,
is
that's
what
not
is-
it. That's
what
not
is
it.
code.
No, that
As
is actually
proposed,
exactly
they
it.
cannot be built. It's very simple. As proposed, they cannot be built. The question to Ken is, will you make the changes so that they can be built?
So that they can be built, yes. to the extent that's feasible.
Yeah, but it's actually a moot point now because no one wants them, right? Or no one wants them because they can't be built nicely.
We were previously, Ken would not agree that he would make the changes that needed to be made to actually build them. He said he has only agreed to build them as proposed.
Yeah.
I said I'm not authorized to change our proffers.
And there we go. We're stuck in the same spot, Ken. I'm sorry. You can wordsmith it however you want, but
Well, no, I'm trying to state a fact, and you're trying to insert your own judgment into it.
there's no judgment here. It can't be
Yeah, there's a
billed
lot
as
of judgment.
proposed.
All right, we're beating a dead horse.
Yeah,
So,
and just remind everybody that it was in a previous meeting, we talked about that these were preliminary drawings. They weren't final drawings in the zoning documents. And so there would need to be further enhancement of that design. Ken agreed to that, and Ken also did mention that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it just took us several meetings to get there, so I understand Michelle's frustration and confusion, and obviously Tammy had the same issue as well, because there was definitely some misunderstandings and in communication. Let's just put that all behind us and let's move on to the best way to represent. So we have, I guess what I'm hearing Rob say and Ken say is there is a bunch of people who are at these meetings who are not putting comments in this document. I didn't put that together. I put that the people who were putting comments in the document, as everybody in the meeting, every panelist was asked to do, has the opportunity to put their opinion down on here. And my expectation is that they would all do that. And then, so if that is not the case, then we have another question. Do they want to put, how do we convey their desire?
I have
or
a,
desire?
I have a suggestion. We have a matrix that we developed throughout these meetings with various people's comments. And there are a lot of people that commented that probably don't have an explicit comment that's included in this report. And I don't know, those are all valid comments. Seems like a lot of them were yay and nay, but I don't suggest we go back and do that. I
No,
just,
those comments were great, because they brought up all the questions that the consultant then got to answer for us. And I think it was a tool to use, and I think people's opinions have morphed and changed over the year and a half we've been working on this. So I don't think they're necessarily where people stand today.
okay.
Yeah, Lori, that was
go
an
ahead.
observation I had, Lori, that I did see participants' opinions change there at the end from even a couple meetings ago when we even did the straw poll to where we are today. Their viewpoints changed because it was informed by other people's comments, some sketches, some information that was presented. So when you look at the comments, so that's reflective in the comments, but yeah, so we might be missing some other people that chose not to comment, but again, we can't go back to like the videotape of weeks or months ago, because those viewpoints could have also changed. And so we're in this kind of point where if people didn't stick in with us and aren't continuing to participate, it's tough to force them.
Yeah, so that's why I made the assumption, be it wrong or right, that the people who are putting in their comments were invested in making their positions known. And if that's where we're going to take, if that's where you're taking the percentage information from, I guess we can keep it that way. But then you are now removing, Ken didn't put a comment in here. Obviously, Brian didn't put a comment in here. And I know they said some folks said they weren't going to vote and they were just participating. So that is what, I guess that's where I thought we were landing, is there are some folks who were in these meetings who had opinions, but said that they were not a voting participant. That's where I got that idea from. I'm trying to put it all together. So I'm assuming that the people who are putting comments in are voting members? Is that even a thing here in this group?
Lori, hi. All right, hi everybody. The comments that are here were originally added when we did the straw poll and discussion. And what we tried to do was, as verbatim as possible, write down what you said and put that under your name. And then Jose sent this out multiple times to give people opportunities to add information. If someone wasn't at that meeting, Connie, I guess you must not have been there at that one. Please go in and add information. But that's how this all got in here. So anyone who was at that meeting where we went around the room and everybody said their piece, that was where all of these initially came from. So that's where that's based off of, and then people had an opportunity to add. Tammy, did you have a question?
Thank you. Yes, and when you're problem solving something so complex as we were presented with the study group, we studied it, and your comments may, as Rob has said repeatedly, your opinions morph over time when you hear other better ideas from people. Mine did completely, and that's why I would spend so much time trying to articulate as many details and put it in this there were 4 maps and 2 pages and a little bit more of text, so it was as complete as I had the time to do, and I spent a lot of time on it.
Thank you.
But that's the point. It's a problem solving. It's a study group. I don't think Walter expects us to get the answer, but I agree with you that you put down the background accurately of how the study group, who participated, and when it was, and how many meetings, and then as much information as people are willing to give about who they are in the community, so that we can judge. Hey, Ken is not going to have a vote here, guys. He's the applicant. We're studying what he and Brian put forward on their behalf. And then Supervisor Alcorn will take that and see what he can do with it. That's in essence where we're at. So please send us what your desires are so that we can look at it, and we're going to have to meet again. And maybe
Tammy,
yeah.
I think that then there may be, Jose, is there anybody who is not the applicant or government like VDOT or FDOT, something like that, who's not on, who has not made a comment other than Connie? Because if there is, and they were just not at the meeting, that Mark just reminded me that that's where we did it, then that is person we'd want to reach out to.
Could you repeat that, Lori? So you wanted me to reach out to the
I don't know, maybe
members that weren't at the meeting?
Yeah, I guess we just need a list of those folks who should be.
I just want to mention, I mean, someone like me, I'm not an expert in any way, and I learned so much. And I was always a huge advocate of the bridge overpass, huge. Anyone who's known me the last 6, 7, 8 years knows that. And the big thing I learned, to me, the showstopper I learned was who owns each side of the bridge. And you can't have overpass. You can't have it when who owns it, who's going to care for it, who's going to maintain that part. That was the big eye opener for me. So I will submit my comments. I realize that the overpass isn't possible because this side's owned by one private entity and that side's owned by the other private entity, and it's not practical. And I hate it, and it's a hell of a thing, but it is a fact. So that's my reason that I came to understand that the overpasses are not an option. Now, I didn't put that in because there are so many other people in this group who do know so much more. I'm learning from them. I didn't think that my comment was that important when I'm agreeing with what everybody's saying. but I'll put it in.
Your
And
comments,
I'll bet you other people that didn't put stuff in, it's for the same sort of reason.
Connie, this is Bruce. And during that meeting, I had a similar reaction because Rob had summarized kind of every issue that I thought I agreed with. And I said that, but that didn't get into my comment. There were some other comments there. So, and I know Jose sent this out and I've been negligent in making the point, but yeah, I'll want to revise my comments and maybe just point to Rob's and say, he summarized what I think is best.
Yeah.
I'd like to revise my comment as well. I have more to add than what's presented.
yep, I feel like we all will. And Jose, if you can just, I don't, maybe if there's anybody that doesn't have their comments on there and you think that they should because they're not either the applicant or FDOT or VDOT or the consultant that we had in here, then we should definitely reach out to that person, and I'll do it personally so that I can explain how important it is.
Tammy had a question.
Yes, please. And you missed the last meeting, but Rob was explicit that he wanted our comments as fast as we could get them in, but for sure before tonight.
Okay.
So anybody who was at that last meeting, and there are a lot of people not here who were at that last meeting, they were instructed very precisely to get
Okay.
their comments to Rob. So the little, quickie comments, they're better than nothing, but I don't want my name under what I said before versus what I sent in at 1:00 something a.m. last night.
I saw.
I worked on a lot on that, and yesterday almost all day on it. So it's a chess match.
I have a question. Have we resolved the 60% comment? I think we should before we end the meeting.
Great.
It's in there a couple of times, and
Yeah,
we could say a majority.
Yeah, well, that's Bruce. That's where we started with the word majority and minority, and then everybody didn't like that last time, so we switched to the percentages. I do think if we do get and seek the additional participation, that the people that do provide comment, then maybe the percentages would be okay. I think the percentages are going to be. I mean, there's only 3 percentages. I think there's 100% that are against the bridges. And then it turned out that the underpass option, I think, and the at grade option ended up being almost a 60% for each one. Again, based on revised comments that we obtained, and I did see people's opinions change throughout the process when I looked at that, and so I don't think we're gonna, the percentages are really gonna change that much. I think it's fairly accurate in terms of the consensus of the group.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. And I see that Tammy has her hand up.
Tammy, go ahead.
I have one clarification that I would like from Brian, if you're on, or Ken. We talked about this, but I apologize for not, burying it in my mind. I thought that the trigger for the bridges is a RUP on the big, giant, tall, high-rise residential. But I thought by virtue of the other development on your site at Campus Commons that you had to provide an on-grade crossing at the ramps or in that vicinity when you finished one of the other projects. Am I incorrect on that? What the trigger point is for the on-grade? I thought you were doing the Sunrise and Wiehle Crossing on grade. That was a done deal. And then this on grade at the ramps was also required. Am I incorrect, or is that an option?
So Tammy, it's Brian. To answer your question, and I will confirm and I can put it in the chat to make sure, but I'm pretty sure, so I'll go ahead and answer. You are correct. The proffer requires, or the proffers
require the improvements at the intersection at Wiehle and Sunrise Valley Drive to be completed prior to the first RUP or non-RUP for the proposed development. So those improvements are upfront. That is correct. With respect to the trigger for the pedestrian bridges and the proffer, that is also correct, that they are tied to the RUP or non-RUP for, I think it's a non-RUP, but it's for building C, the tall tower. And with respect to the at-grade pedestrian crossing across Wiehle at the toll road ramps, it's a little bit of both. And the reason is, throughout the rezoning application, we had suggested in the proffers that the trigger be prior to the first RUP or non-RUP for the new development. I believe that is the case for that specific proffer, and it was left that way in the proffers. However, I think, as many of you may recall, there was a desire toward the end of the rezoning application to evaluate whether that crossing would be an appropriate solution for the pedestrian access across Wiehle, and whether it would be desirable to evaluate that pedestrian crossing at grade along with the bridge options that were in the CDP FDP and any other options that the study group may consider. And to that end, the proffer was modified to say something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing, that the at-grade pedestrian crossing at the toll road ramps would be included as part of the study. And so I think there was the intent being that if the study group wanted to make a recommendation and the board, the planning commission or the board, when it goes to the board, could determine, whether and when to require that improvement, that it would be part of that process. That's what I remember. I'm pretty sure that's the case. I will pull it up right now and paste the language into the chat, but essentially that at-grade crosswalk was to be, for lack of a more eloquent term, thrown in as part of the study group evaluation.
But not required.
I think not required, correct. I think it was left to the study group recommendation and the board's determination as to whether that would be required or to be provided or not to be provided.
I thought TF Cornerstones desperately wanted that.
Well, if you're asking for our opinion, we think that, and we've been consistent all along, that we think people will want to cross that grade, and we think people are going to cross that grade, and we think it would be better to do so with a pedestrian crossing and that it would be safer. I think that there's also, me personally, and Ken and I haven't talked about this in detail, so Ken can sort of proverbially kick me under the table, but I think there's a lot of merit to the concept that Rob suggested in terms of improvements that can be made to Wiehle, and if that's part of changing the configuration of the road and make the crossing even better and safer, I think that, in concept, I think that would be very desirable. But to be clear, we've been consistent all along that we think people are going to cross that grade regardless of what other options are available or not available, and therefore we think that there should be an at-grade crosswalk to do it as safely as possible.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And if you put that in the chat, appreciate that too.
Yeah, I will confirm that right now.
Yeah, and Jose, can you capture the chat, please, so we have that?
Yes, I will.
Thank you so much.
We go back to the 60% because I don't think we finalized that. I'm not comfortable saying that it's 60% of the study group. I think we could say 60% of those who provided comment below. I'd be more comfortable with that. But I do just want to clarify that this is not representative necessarily of the entire study group.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just looking ahead here, everybody, about dates. So it sounds like we are going to. I think the action items become Jose and I work on some language that we send out in an email to the entire study group that make sure everybody's aware and clarifies that we're looking for a study group's voice to be heard and kind of counted. They need to kind of respond in writing to this document in order to be kind of, counted as part of the group. And, we'll say that the right way.
Rob,
Yes.
just a quick comment about that. And if those comments are under our name, I don't think anyone needs to edit that unless, it's totally out of place. But those are kind of our own comments, and we're responsible for those. The other comments in the other parts of the document, we would all probably want to see and make sure we agree with.
Yes. Yeah. So what I was thinking was we need to give everybody a deadline, and then we need to think about when we all need it to see it, have time for ourselves to comment. And then it sounds like, there's a suggestion to meet again. I know I cannot personally meet on the fourth Thursday in August. And again, our deadline is in August. So I would prefer that we meet earlier than the fourth Thursday in August. So I'll throw out this. I was thinking today's the July 29th. If we gave everybody till the 9th of August to make comment, and then I'll have a couple days to pull this together. And the idea would be to send a final draft out to the committee by the 12th of August, and then maybe meet on the 19th of August, which is a Thursday. And that would be the attempt to try to, and we can have dialogue, over email prior to then, but
So it's a little hard to have dialogue over email because it's a one-way email address. So perhaps one thing that could be done is, I don't know, is like Tammy's comments were helpfully sent to the group ahead of time, but they had to be forwarded by Jose. So to the extent that you guys can keep that in mind and let the whole group know when edits to the section above have been provided, I think that would be grateful. I'd be grateful for that. But otherwise, I mean, the dates I think work.
Tammy, you had a question?
Yes, Jose is not going to be around. So we have to have another way to get disperse stuff. People are going on vacation, including staff. We have to be, compassionate about that.
right.
So maybe Rob, do you have the whole list? Does Lori have the whole list?
I'm happy to
I
share the
don't, but
list with Rob.
yeah, Jose can share the list with me.
Jose,
I mean,
yeah, please do, so that we can at least send it to Rob and Lori.
Okay.
And then they can send it out. They can toss up a stone and see who sends it. And if Lori's having eye difficulty, don't go on vacation, Rob.
my vacation starts in 2 days.
I have two more requests, if I may. The first one is I'd like for the email that goes out to everyone to be very specific that if you have provided comment previously or at this meeting, it is included below. I know at least one person's name isn't spelled correctly, and I have to imagine that if she saw it, she would have asked for a correction. So I don't know that everyone whose comments are in here knows that their comments are being submitted in a public document. The second request is that that the email that goes out to the original list that included everyone who expressed an interest in this study group.
I have the original email that went out, so.
Hey, Rob?
Have you actually modified that list then over time, or did you retain that same list from the original?
I retained it, plus I think a couple folks that joined the first meeting in person. And then I think maybe there was like a couple persons that don't live in the area anymore. Has to be taken out.
Okay.
Rob?
Yes.
Just one comment on timing. We absolutely have to get the board, or have to get this to the board for the proffer by October 15th. However, the latest board meeting is October 5th that we could get this to the board. So in order to get it to the board, basically there needs to be what's called a board matter written. That goes through a rather extensive review on the county side of things. And Jose and I'll be working on that together. That basically it's going to have some of the same information here. It's not going to have any of the perspectives of the group. It's just going to say this group met, see the attached document. If there are conclusions in here, we may reflect those conclusions depending on what's minimally necessary. But just in terms of time, I definitely think August 19th is really the latest that would be enough time for us to be able to turn something around. I think earlier would be preferred, but I realize that's only 3 weeks from now. So unless the group wants to meet earlier.
So ideally, that meeting would on the 19th would be just to 100% sign off on what we've already all know, and we'd just be there together for 5 minutes, say, go Rob, tag it, you're it. And with that in mind, I can commit to, I have my next eye surgery on August 11th, so I am going to get this done before Friday the 6th, and I will get it to you, Rob, and to the team so that everybody can comment on my changes.
But you're going to give us your red line right away.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got that done, send it out.
Yes,
Well,
Maurice.
Yeah, okay, so I have a thought about the reaching out to people who have not yet submitted comments. If you go back to the original list of people who were participating in January, February, March of 2020, and they have sort of dropped off the radar since then, I don't think there's any reason to reach out to those individuals. I think somebody who is going to be allowed to be part of this document has to have functioned with this committee for pretty much the duration of its existence. So when you decide who you're going to reach out to, I would urge you to look for names of people who have been active participants and not initial interested parties who have subsequently decided that this was not something they cared that much about. That's my thought.
That's a good thought. The only problem with that is there are times when these meetings conflict with other county meetings, and the people who may appear to you and I who have dropped off may in fact be watching every broadcast of this. So, if they're not paying attention to it, and they did drop off in reality, then they're not going to pay attention to the next email that Rob sends out saying, hey, this is your last chance. They're going to go, oh, I'm still not paying attention to it. So I don't think that's a real big area of concern. That's just, but I think you have to honor the fact that they signed up for it, unless they wrote to Jose and said, don't include me on this anymore.
Yeah, and if Jose's been using that original list, I assume they've seen the traffic that's happened all along. I agree with Maurice, but I also agree with you, Lori, that I think they're aware, and if they haven't contributed, they very likely won't again.
Jose, can you tell from looking at the video who has been actually watching, even if they have not been commenting either orally or by writing comments? Can you look at the video?
Yeah, we do have the Wiehle study group email, but we also have the with WebEx, when I sent you guys the invites, it does have like a list of who has joined when we went virtual. So maybe that, maybe is a good call, like, who's when we did the matrix and then got through the end of last year, but also picked it back up earlier this year.
I would
I'm
urge
kinda
you
like
to
a-
use that then in deciding who you send this to. People have been watching, absolutely, but people who have not been watching, not been participating, I would say they really have not earned a place at the table.
And to that point, you know, there were people who were invited to be on this panel. And if you haven't been there, you don't have the background to know why or why not you might not want to do that. So it's a cumulative knowledge thing. That's my view. I'll be quiet.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time with this one. I see both sides of the argument. It is a cumulative knowledge thing. And, but I can't tell whether or not somebody, I mean, Jose can't tell whether or not Joe, you know, missed the meeting but watched the video.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I thought he said he could tell who watched the video.
Oh,
He can
not the
probably
video,
see
but
more.
join the meetings.
Yeah.
Sorry, Maurice.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that maybe that just the invite that goes out, it'll go out to the bigger list, but maybe it'll be worded such that, and just saying that if they've been an active participant in the process and would like their opinion to be part of the summary, please provide their comments. And
There
then
you go.
let them
Sounds
kind of
good.
decide if they've been active enough and
Okay.
certainly if we see a rogue name pop up, we could put the question. But
Sounds good.
If there's another Jose, then we.
yeah.
Okay. I think that covers it.
Hey, it's Brian, everybody. If I may, I wanted to note that I put the information from the proffers into the chat, and I wanted to also call out that I made one mistake in what I said. I had said that the crosswalk at the toll road ramps would be triggered by the first RUP or non-RUP for the new development. I think that's what we had for a long time during the rezoning application. But when the crosswalk was put into the study group review, then because the pedestrian bridges would be triggered by building C, we then also, I think staff actually asked us to do this, which we did, change the trigger for the at-grade crosswalk to also be with building C, so we wouldn't get into a situation where if hypothetically building A or B went first, the crosswalk would be provided and then couldn't be part of the study review, which needs to be done before building C.
Right. What happened was, and this hasn't happened, but if Campus Commons had chosen to move forward and build a building and build a building in the time we've been meeting or the time before the board makes a decision, that would have caused a conflict with the proffers, because essentially they would have been required to put a crosswalk in, but also would have had to get board permission when this was done. So I will say, I mean, you all have read these proffers now. One of the most challenging things about working through proffers is trying to make sure that everything aligns and makes sense and that it's all enforceable and implementable. And so we had to push that back to make sure that that trigger and the trigger for this group all could work in tandem, and we wouldn't end up in a situation in which two conflicting responsibilities fall on the applicant, because at that point, that would have been a what we call a determination on the county side, and we wouldn't have had a lot to go on. And obviously, given all of the feedback we've gotten from this group, it's good that we made sure that all the people here and all the people who aren't here tonight but have contributed are able to provide feedback on that, so that the board can make a more informed decision. So thank you.
I have a question related to that. So when building A is built, if that's assuming that's the first building, so there's no requirement for the crosswalk, but is it the assumption that the crosswalk would be built with the first building that's built? Or
Are you talking about the ramp crosswalk?
Yes.
The crosswalk at the toll road.
So the crosswalk at the toll road has to be in place if the board determines that it should be in place before building C. Now, let's say the board determines it should be in place and TF Cornerstone decides they want it earlier. There's nothing at that point stopping them from providing that improvement earlier, as long as all the other pieces of that proffer have been fulfilled. So if the board says okay to a crosswalk, TF Cornerstone could then go put it in, but at the latest, when they go to get that use permit for building C, they'll have to demonstrate that it has been put in or that the board did not direct them to include the crosswalk.
But there's no requirement that it be in there when building A and then building B is built. So it could be there's two buildings built and occupied before there's a crosswalk.
That's correct. And
No, hang on, that's not correct. Before the crosswalk at the toll road ramps, and
Yes,
that's why there's a differentiation between the crosswalks. I think, Bruce, I'm assuming you're asking, will there be a crosswalk for access across Wiehle Avenue if the at-grade crosswalk at the toll road ramps is not built, but building A or building B is built? Those two buildings, the likely pedestrian path to the metro station would be across the crosswalk at the Sunrise Valley Drive, Wiehle Avenue intersection. And those improvements are required prior to the first RUP or non-RUP for the proposed development.
Okay, but then you wouldn't have the crosswalk at the Dulles Toll Road. All right, I understand now.
Right. We lined that up based on what would be the logical pedestrian path for each of the buildings. That's why it's triggered that way.
Okay, thank you.
When does the contribution, when will that be made? Assuming obviously the bridges are probably not going to be chosen.
Contribution would be made prior to the residential use permit for building C. So the same time that they would have had to build the overpass is when they would have to provide the contribution.
For some reason, I was under the impression, Jose, can you remove the document off the screen and just put everybody up there, please, since we're kind of done with it? I thought building C in the back was the one that had to be built first because the parking garage had to be built first. Is that not correct?
Yeah, Lori, I'm not sure who you're proposing that question
Like I
to.
said, there's nothing in the proffers that dictates the order of the buildings.
Okay, that was just an aside.
Lori, I think what you're talking about is when building A or B are built, they're going to be built on the existing surface parking. And there needs to be a place for the tenants in the two original buildings to park. And there also needs to be a place for construction equipment to be stored. So you are accurate in your memory that there was discussion from TF Cornerstone that they would be building the garage part podium of C or part thereof in order to provide parking on site for their employees in their existing building. Whether they continue with that plan or sell their property or decide never to build C up into the air, they did absolutely discuss building that parking garage for the purposes I just said.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I thought I was going crazy. Okay.
Yeah, so that is correct, Tammy, and thank you for mentioning that. To be clear, there's nothing in the proffers that requires us to do it that way, but that is the likely scenario.
Okay.
But just to be clear also, so there is a scenario where you do both crosswalks, but do not contribute the 1.65. Is that correct? I think so, Lori. If they
No.
don't build building C, they're not contributing. Is that correct?
If they never build building C, then the proffer is never triggered. But at the same time, this is how development works in this Commonwealth of Virginia, is that there are proffers, and the proffers are usually tied to construction because there needs to be a nexus where the jurisdiction can demonstrate that there is a direct relationship between the improvement, whether it's road improvement, a park improvement, whatever, and the additional development that's happening. So there has to be mitigation that's based on that development. So building C happens to have the majority of the residential units and frankly the overall square footage for this property. Hence, it would make sense that the larger improvements are tied to that. However, the significant improvements at Sunrise Valley and Wiehle are tied to the first use permit on the site, which could include building A or B. And those are significant improvement as well. So this is, again, I realize I'm working in this all day, but this is pretty common that different improvements are tied to different stages of the development or different buildings within the development. And so, yes, if they chose to forgo a pretty significant amount of entitlement on the site, which by the way would also mean a lot fewer vehicle trips, pedestrian trips, etc., then they would not be required to provide the overpass and or cash contribution.
Thank you. I understood that. My only question was simply that they could still do that at-grade crossing at the toll road without any changes to it and without any money to make the rest of Wheelie better.
If the board says that if the board chooses to support the at-grade crossing, then they could install it anytime they want, up to, with VDOT approvals, et cetera, up to the time they try to pull a use permit for building C. The same applies to, frankly, the contribution or the above grade crossing. That there's nothing in the proffers, and this is pretty standard, that would stop them from pursuing an improvement earlier than they've committed to do it. Sort of like if you have a contract agreement with somebody and you choose to do your part earlier.
No, I think we understand that. The question was, though, the beautiful drawing that Rob presented can't happen unless funding is provided. And so there's no guarantee that could, so what we could be left with is the crosswalk with the pork chop in the middle of the toll road.
Yeah, so what you're saying is what I didn't realize, Michelle, is that, we might not like the bridge options. We might all be really excited about Rob's great drawing and multimodal and north and south mobility and an eastern side of the toll road crossing for people and for bikes, and it would be fabulous. But it takes money to do that. And where's that money going to come from? And it either is going to come from the county, or what we were thinking is that, oh, well, we'll just be able to use that extra money as we need it, because then that money would just come from TF Cornerstone. But what you're saying is, if they never build building C, we never get that money.
I think it's not even if they never build. Let's say building C doesn't come from 10 years. We could have 10 years of having the crosswalk with the pork chop in the middle and Wheelie being still unwalkable, unusable to pedestrians and cyclists alike.
I got it.
Yeah, I think that. Sorry, this is Bruce. I think we all understood that what Rob envisioned is going to take a lot of money and probably some time, but I saw it as an opportunity, since we're talking about that corridor, to envision what we think is a long-term multimodal use that would be more urban. And yeah, the 1 point whatever million would certainly help, but it would be far from what would be needed. The county would have to make a commitment to making that vision happen.
Yes, I understand, but you'd also still, for however many years, have an unsafe crosswalk with a pork chop in the middle of the toll road.
Yeah, that's the part that I'm not following you, Michelle. It's Brian. We still need to get approval in order to build that crosswalk in that configuration. So if that's not approved, even if the decision is made by the Board of Supervisors to not approve any of the pedestrian bridges and the contribution is to be made, and let's say the contribution is to be made hypothetically at some point in the future based on the timing for the construction and occupancy of building C, that doesn't automatically give us the right to build the crosswalk at grade in the configuration that was on the plan. That still needs to be approved.
And in addition to that, Michelle, I think I understand what you're saying now. Yes, we would not have access to that contribution until most likely the developer goes to pull the use permit for building C. With that said, the county could choose to pursue improvements in the nearer term with other funding. With they could prioritize other funding. There's other developments that will continue to come in this area. There may be opportunities to look at other opportunities to improve the corridor over time. So yes, but ideally, if they build faster, we get the money sooner. But at the same time, that's really on them, because the 1.65 million is to support the additional pedestrians crossing Wiehle Avenue from building C. One of the things Brian mentioned was the walk patterns, especially to and from the metro, from the site, and buildings A and B, their front doors are on Sunrise Valley. But building B is on the corner of Sunrise Valley and Wiehle. Building A, its front door is on Sunrise. It's against Sunrise Valley. It's in the southeast corner of the site. So the demand for a crossing at the toll road increases exponentially when building C is built, because those folks, their front door is much closer to the toll road crossing than the Sunrise Valley crossing.
Yes, I fully understand that. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So I need to ask Jose a very important question here. We talked about the potential for a Thursday, August 19th date. Jose, are you aware of any conflicts, or is that a possibility?
Typically I can only speak from the Hunter Mill office. I know there's no board meetings in August. So I know that is clear. I can check. I've been checking Reston Association's calendar to make sure that we don't conflict with any meetings that they may have. But I can let you guys know as soon as possible if there is one, but I can't think of one at the moment.
Yeah, well, let's you and I work on that, and then when we send out the email, we'll include the dates if that still sticks. Everybody's deadline for the comments, and then the follow-up, and then when to expect the final draft, and then that board date our next meeting date will be on that as well.
And please specify this is a drop dead date.
Yeah.
And Jose, are you going to be in town on the 19th?
Not the week before, but I'll be back in Fairfax County that week.
Okay. I just don't want to plan a meeting if we're not going to have a facilitator.
No, you'll still have one.
Thank you.
A question for Mark. If we meet on August 19th, he says that's a drop dead date for you to get the document. So we have to be sending you the finished product the very day we meet. Is that what you're saying, Mark?
No.
Wait.
I'm asking Mark. I'm asking Mark.
I think the answer to your question is we need it basically on the 19th or the 20th or maybe the 23rd. But I mean, we really need to be able to move this through the process, because it's going to have to go to the board essentially five weeks later, which sounds like a lot of time, but in a large county like this, it's not a lot of time, because it has to go through a whole bunch of people. So, if that's, I like the way you put it, Tammy, is a drop dead date.
Yeah.
If and I think Lori, was it you that said basically we're coming together, singing Kumbaya and calling it a night? That That sounds great. So I think we can work with that. Just let's please not delay it any further than that.
I
Hopefully
heard,
it'll be the shortest meeting ever.
yeah, I heard
tomorrow.
Lori say 5 minutes. I thought I heard
I'm on
5
board
minutes.
with that.
I think it should be a virtual party where we all say thank you to Jose for helping host us for this time. We should all bring our beverage of choice and talk about our hobbies.
All right. All right.
Just not a real meeting.
I think we're done tonight.
Hey,
unless
Rob,
somebody- Yes.
before we go, this is Bruce. I won't be here on the 19th. I'll be hopefully on a lake in Vermont. So I wanted to thank you and Laurie and everybody else for all your comments and input. I learned a lot during these meetings. Didn't always keep my cool, but I agree with kind of what we've come up with, and I'll put my comments in, my personal comments in, obviously before I leave. But I'm fine with whatever y'all come up with. I think the basic recommendation goes along with what my thoughts are. So I'll see you some other time.
All right. Thanks, Bruce, for your participation and all your valuable input.
All right.
Okay, with that, I think it's time to adjourn.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.